Hey everyone, this tutorial is meant to help you get started with TASing Majora's Mask. You can see on screen the topics I'll be covering, which range from setup to core game mechanics to the basic bread and butter task tricks that you'll be using very often. Depending on your familiarity with TASing or with Zelda 64 speedrunning in general, you may be able to skip around a bit. If you're brand new, I'd encourage you to stick along for the whole ride though. To start off with, you'll want to visit this page on TAS videos. This is where you can find all the different versions of Bizhawk. I'll include a link to this page in the description of the video and in a pinned comment as well. To go over installation, I'm going to install a version of Bizhawk that I don't already have. Let's go with 2.8. I typically use 1.13.2, but this will work just fine. You'll want to make a directory for Bizhawk somewhere on your computer. I would generally recommend the desktop. So let me just get to that. New folder, Bizhawk 2.8. So I want to extract the files from your download to that folder. I use 7-zip for compressed libraries, but anything will work fine. Even WinRAR that you didn't pay for. You can extract it with the built-in function of drag and drop. I usually just use drag and drop. Go ahead and close out a 7-zip file. Now, they're not done yet. If you try to run Bizhawk, you'll probably get an error message. In order to fix that, you're going to want to go back up to the top of this page on TAS videos and download the Bizhawk prereqs. According to the page, the process for Linux users is a little different, and people I've known using Bizhawk on Linux have had quite a few issues. So if at all possible, I would recommend using Windows. A link here will take you to the GitHub page with all the different versions of the prereqs on it. You can see there the newest ones at the top. For simplicity, probably just stick to the newest version of Bizhawk and the newest version of the prereqs. That'll make sure everything works fine. So click that to download this. Navigate to that and open up that directory. And you can actually just run the installer straight from the zip file. You don't even need to extract it. So get it started, let it do its thing. Once it's done, you can click close. Close out of that zip file. And with that, Bizhawk is good to go. Okay, starting here, I'm going to go a little more off script and just kind of call it as I see it. So in config, you've got a bunch of different options. First of all, controller, you can set up controls. I've got this layout here for my keyboard. You can set up auto fire, which basically is like a turbo controller, and that can be configured as well. I'll show you that in a bit here. You can set up extra sensitivity for the joystick. Hotkeys, this is extremely, extremely important. So I've got frame advance there. I have not configured rewind. You can set that up. It's basically just a system that creates save states at an interval, and you can go back at whatever point you choose. Turbo is set for some reason. Turbo is basically the same thing as fast forward, except it shuts off the audio when you're doing it, so you don't get that like zippy audio effect. Back to hotkeys, you got some more. There's like a bunch of stuff in here that you don't really need. Toggle throttle is basically turbo and fast forward, but toggle on, toggle off. Soft reset, hard reset as the reset and power buttons. Quick load and quick save, these are pretty important. You don't have to use them. It loads or saves with the currently selected save state slot, which you can see at the bottom of my window there is state 0 currently. Flush save RAM, you never want to use this one. That's just going to delete all your stuff. Bunch of like visual stuff, increase and decrease speed that will just affect the speed of the emulation playback. So you can speed it up or slow it down. I mostly use this if I'm like having a script play something back over and over and over again, and I don't want to sit there and watch it do it slowly every single time. Save states, there's two main ways people manage save states. They can either set a hotkey to save to a numbered save state and also a hotkey to load from a numbered save state, or you can select and load and save from selected. The most important thing in this section, I would say, is toggle read only. That's going to be very important. That gives you a lot of control in your movie recording. Then save movie and stop movie are also pretty valuable. I use play from beginning sometimes. Save and stop movie will both save the movie, so you don't need to worry much about that. Beyond this point, I really don't use any hotkeys for anything. Like this just opens the tools. I don't mind clicking for that because I only have to do that when I open the emulator. RAM search, you've got some stuff there. Test Studio, I don't even use. I'm not familiar with Test Studio, so not something I mess with. Display, this doesn't really affect how the emulation, like how the game plays. It's mostly your end. File paths, you can set up file paths here. I generally like how it's set up by default, so I don't have any problems with this. But you can change it if you want. Oh yeah, and it can emulate a TI-83 calculator, which I find pretty funny. Firmwares. This is not something you'll need to worry about with Majora's Mask. If you're setting up an emulator for one of the consoles that is not easily supported, you'll want to mess with that. Auto fire configure. This is basically just setting up the turbo. You can choose to take lag frames into account or not. You choose how many frames it's pressing the button, how many frames it's releasing the button. I've got 1 and 1 with lag frames into account. So just get an idea. If I were to just do this, so it'd be 1 on, 1 off, on. Each time like it would keep going until it turns white again. And then without lag frames into account, it'd be every single time I advance a frame. Customize. In here, there's not too much you have to worry about. This is largely a lot of preference stuff. There is, however, a couple things you want to take a look at in advanced. So some of this stuff is basically just already set up how you'd want it set up. Big thing, you want to make sure frame advance button skips non-input frames. You want that to be off. You do not want to be skipping non-input frames because this game will pull inputs even on lag frames. So if I were to turn that on, you can see it's skipping frames. This is vital information I'm losing. So we absolutely want that off. Make sure you save your config, otherwise you'll have to do that all again. One thing I forgot to do while I was recording this is I didn't go into profiles. Profiles, you've got your different options. Despite what you would expect, do not be fooled. You do not want to set this to N64 tool-assisted speedruns. You just want regular tool-assisted speedruns. That'll have everything you need. There may be some changes you make in the config or in other settings that will ask for a reboot of the core. That's just under emulation there. Or if you change anything, it'll also appear as that red circle down in the bottom right near where that green check mark is currently. And here under view, first thing is window size. This doesn't actually work. Window size for this game will be determined by your video plugin and the resolution that you set it to. This doesn't do anything. As for the rest of the stuff, is basically the information that is displayed on the screen and console. I don't feel like that's necessary. Display input, I'm going to keep on. I usually keep it on, but I'm definitely keeping it on for the duration of this tutorial. You can see what buttons I'm pressing up there. I will try my best during this tutorial to be using the on-screen controller as much as possible, but I may forget sometimes. Under N64, your use expansion slot will always be enabled. You cannot disable it. This game requires the expansion slot, so you can't do anything about that. Non-VI lag frames you want to keep on. It gives you a visual indicator of when you're advancing a visual frame versus when you're advancing lag frames or input frames. And plugins, I use 1.13.2. For that, I'll use Java 1.61. Now I'm going to open up 2.9 here. Because on Series 2 of Bizhawk, they dropped support for Java. So on these versions, I use Glide N64. And there's a setting in here that you'll want to have enabled. It is yeah, here under frame buffer. You want this to be on VI origin change, the buffer swap mode. If you don't have it set up like that, then your game will not be able to properly count lag frames, and that's annoying. Something I should note about using Glide versus Java, you will notice it took 2 frames for Link to turn after I pressed right, and 3 after I pressed right in Glide. Doesn't affect how the game plays, it just means there's an extra frame of visual delay. So any visual cue I'm using throughout this tutorial, I'm using on Java. If you're using Glide, you need to do it a frame earlier, visually. If I'm going by the information, the addresses, which I'll show here in a second, then that will not be different. Just the visuals. Toolbox is such a pointless thing on here. Because you can only open one tool with it. You can't even right click. As soon as you open a tool, it closes Toolbox. So RamWatch, this is a tool that you're always going to have open. So RamWatch can display values on the screen, different information. You can add values to this. I'm just going to pick a default value, 4-byte unsigned. We'll call it address. I don't know what this address is, so just showcasing that it'll appear on the screen. This one is not even going to change when I go through a loading zone, so yeah. I do have my pre-built addresses here. This has got all sorts of helpful information on here. Now this does have a few handy features you can use. It says we got poke address. These I use fairly often. You don't use them for like the final version of a task, but I can poke address to change a value. For instance, there I gave myself 30 bombs. This is really helpful for just like testing stuff. Say I want to get up somewhere real high to see what's going on there. Say I like sent a bomb chew up there, or I shot an arrow somewhere high. I can set my fall speed to be way up in the air so that I shoot up into the sky. This freeze address will lock an address at its current value. Say I want to make sure this angle is good. I can guarantee that I will not deviate from this line by locking move angle and facing angle. Lock coordinates if you want. I can lock my bomb count so that no matter what I do, it will not go up or down. Now to get all of these handy addresses, you can load a watch file, but if you need to find addresses, that is where RAM search comes in. So this is basically a tool that lets you find information using various parameters. I'm going to close out my RAM watch so that I don't have anything on the screen. Now let's try to find a value. Let's look for link speed. Now you might know what size the address you're looking for is. You might have a guess. You might have no idea. It could be a trial and error process. I'm not moving, so I'll check to make sure that the value is equal to 0. I can click this lightning magnifying glass and it'll check it every frame. Only values that meet my condition will be kept. Equal to previous value, which is not changed. Despite what you might think, previous value is not the value it was on the last stream. It's the value it was last time you, like, ran a check. There might be a way to change that somewhere in these settings, but eh. Let's check not equal to previous value, because now we're moving. And now we've stopped again, so not equal to previous value again. Make sure that it's not changing because we haven't started moving. What the hell? Okay. So now let's check for greater than 0 because we are moving. Equal to 0. Equal to 0. This can be a process to find the data you're looking for. So here I'm going to have to get a little bit creative. So we're going to see greater than 0. And then I'll do a movement that I know increases my speed. So when we do that, I'll check for greater than previous value. And that narrows it down quite a bit. And based on what I know, I can tell it's one of the bottom two. You can poke and freeze memory addresses with RAM search as well. And if it does something that can be helpful information. So let's see here. That's the address of speed, and it's right there in the RAM watch as well. The value that seems to mimic it on like a delay is kind of strange. So once you've found what you want, you can click on that and then click this RAM watch symbol. That'll add it to your list. It's easy to miss it at first. Then you can label it whatever you want. We'll just label this. I'm not actually going to save that because I've already got the addresses I need. Virtual pad. This is basically the on-screen controller. This thing is extremely helpful. It lets you make very fine, precise stick inputs, and you can make button inputs whenever you want at very clear moments. For some buttons like A and B, I'll sometimes just use the keyboard. For settings on joypad. You can add more controllers in there. This requires a core reboot. Reboot the virtual pad here. And then this becomes the most terrifying thing you've ever seen. I don't know how anyone's brain could possibly manage all of this. Let's go back to one controller. Oops. There we go. Settings, these are largely preference. I just save window position. On pads, there was an option that you'd want to check there. Sticky. You want sticky checked. If you uncheck that, this gets really annoying really fast because then it clears your inputs every single time you hit frame advance, including joystick inputs, and that just gets obnoxious really quickly. So sticky stays active. If you're ever worried about setting the stick back to neutral, you can just right click in the stick field and that'll return it to neutral. And if you right click the buttons, that is what enables auto fire. So right clicking B, I just start swinging the sword like a crazy person. And left or right click to shut that off. I could rapid fire ocarina notes. That doesn't really work too well. There is a really cool feature of the joystick here, which is that it has your standard XY coordinates, but it also has a polar coordinate system mapped on it, which can be pretty helpful if you're trying to find a partial extension of an angle that you like. The last tool to cover is the Lua console. There are, of course, other tools in the list, but this is the last I'll be covering for this. Lua console, basically you can just run Lua scripts. So start showing just a bomb chew testing script that I had made. This will pull for input to determine where to start. It'll look for bomb chews either in your hand or on your C buttons, and it'll just proceed to try angles. And it'll fast forward to let you see what happens. Shut that down. Now we're going to switch over to the Japanese version of the game real quick to show off another script. That one was more of an active script where it's like actively performing a function. Here I'm going to show a more passive script. This one is a slightly modified version of a script that Kaztelek gave me. There are no memory addresses to give you this information. You have to infer it or calculate it from other information that is given to you. This was a life changer in doing lullaby skip because this wind is random and having just the information, the feedback of the delay between the cycles was huge. So it can be useful for stuff like that as well. Okay, so to actually record movies, You go to File, Movie, Record Movie. You'll name it something. I'll name it just Movie Demonstration. And make your author. You've got 3 choices for when you can start it. Power On starts it from power on with clean cartridge rules, meaning there's no save data. Now starts it from the exact moment you are now, and save RAM lets you pick a moment from, like a save state from save RAM. Usually I just use power on or now. You'll also notice that all my save slots are now grayed out. The save states are they're tied to the movie, so I don't have to worry about intermingling them. That being said, you still can load other save states, you just have to load it as named states. So let's just record some inputs here. I'll turn around, pull a bow target. Let's keep holding this so I can shoot an arrow. There we go. Heard that hit the ice. So toggle read only, load save 1, and now it'll play back. Play back in real time or in frame advance. I'm actually going to save a state here and load it in read and write mode. That lets me continue from that point. So this is how being able to toggle read only gives you a lot of control over making changes in your movie. So make a change I just backflip earlier, which causes my arrow to shoot at the ground a little bit behind me. So let's go ahead and save that and stop the recording. Now, if you want to make some adjustments to a movie, there is another way you can do it. I usually use this if I'm doing RNG manipulation or if I'm just adjusting the timing of when I pull a bomb or something. You can go to your Bizhawk directory, go to Movies, find the movie, open it with a zip file manager like 7-zip, and then open the input log. And this is the input log. This is basically the player piano reel that makes your TAS go. So I'm going to make an adjustment here. You can't just put the buttons wherever you want. They have positioning. So I'll just shift the A button press to be one visual frame later. Close out of that. Confirm I want to update that in the archive. And then we'll play that back. Now it shoots the arrow straight down at my feet instead of a little bit behind me, because I delayed the backflip by another frame. Or I did it a frame earlier, not delayed it. Alright, so to go over the controls of the game, we'll start with the B button. Honestly, if you are at all familiar with this game, this is probably the section you are most able to skip. The B button controls the sword. Depending on how you're holding the stick or how you're using the Z button, you'll have different sword slashes. If you just press B standing still, you do horizontal slash. If you press B while holding Z and down on the stick, that will also do a horizontal slash. Each slash type has a 3-hit combo. Next up, if you're holding Z and nothing on the stick, you do this vertical slash. Alternatively, you can be holding forward relative to the direction Link is facing and press B without the Z button held. That will also do a vertical slash. Say relative to the way Link is facing, because if I do it holding down like this while he's facing towards the camera, that will do a vertical slash. Next thing, holding Z and right. We'll do this diagonal slash here, like that. This is a really good slash. It has a very wide range. It's probably one of my most used sword slashes. You could also tap right and B at the same time while not holding Z. That will do it as well. Then we have the thrust attack, holding Z and forward while pressing B. Does this thrust attack? There is no equivalent to do this without holding the Z button. This is the only attack that can be done only while holding the Z button. This attack is pretty quick, so it's a good option. Next up, if you hold the B button and release, you get a spin attack. If you release it prematurely, you can either interrupt it or you can do a spin attack without magic. You can also do a spin attack without having to use magic or holding the B button. If you rotate the stick, which basically requires 4 inputs roughly 90 degrees apart, with the sword out, I press B on the third frame of joystick inputs. Any earlier, and you'll see it's not going to work. I can do it later, but if I do it later, I need to continue making stick inputs like this. So I press B there, and I continue the stick inputs. And there's my quick spin. The timing for this is going to be different if you have the sword in hand versus if you have the sword away. You can see it's more responsive doing a sword swing when I have it in my hand. If you're doing it with sword away, you press B as soon as you start doing the rotational inputs. Then after that, we've got the jump attack, which you just press B while you're in the air, and that does a jump attack. This attack does more damage than the other attacks we've seen so far. The other attacks do the base weapon damage, while this does double. And as long as you're holding any direction on the joystick, your jump attack will travel at a higher speed than normal. You can also do a jump attack on the ground by holding Z and pressing A. I know we're deviating from the B button a little bit, but this is a complex game. Buttons work together. Trying to make a control section is messy. Other melee weapons work too, like the Deku stick. Jump attacks do not work out of backflips. The sort of state backflip puts you in doesn't work for that. There's one last attack to cover. That is the crouch stab. It's a very quick attack. You just hold R without Z held, and that'll cause Link to crouch with the shield, and then you press B. You can use the stick to kind of aim this a little bit. This attack does weapon damage on, like the base weapon damage on the US version of the game. We'll go over the Japanese version in a second. You can quick draw the sword by pressing B and then holding R to crouch as you draw it. If you're just wanting to do a crouch stab, this is not faster than just crouching and then stabbing, but it can have some uses. Now I'll load up the Japanese version of the game. We'll find a good save state. Here we go. So, as you can see, my crouch step is not doing anything to this torch. You see this PCS value, it's equal to 1. By default, on the Japanese version of the game, crouch step does not have a damage type or value really associated with it. So it's equal to whatever your last attack was. Here you can see I did a Deku Stick Jump Slash. So it's using the properties of the Deku Stick and the attack power of the Deku Stick. In this case, high attack power, but Deku Stick can't break the pots. I swing the sword. Sword swings can break pots, and then crouch stab works on the pots. Your C buttons use the various items you can equip to the C buttons in the upper right, and they're also used for actually changing what you have on the buttons. I will go over these different items in the items section. There's going to be a few highlights in there, but most of them will be covered pretty quickly. Z recenters the camera behind you, or you can use it to target and untarget enemies. The R button is your shield. You can either hold it without Z and just crouch with it, or you can hold it with Z and get this kind of guarding stance, and you can move around. The shield does not inhibit your movement while you are moving, but it does inhibit your ability to get started moving, which I'll show here. So from here, I hold forward. See, it takes a few frames for me to get started moving. Now, if I hold forward here without the shield, I get moving a frame faster. My end speed, though, is the same, so just don't hold it while you're starting to move. Now, Z targeting, in options on the title screen here, you can do switch or hold. For RTA runs, it's really just a matter of preference. Hold, you have to hold the target button to maintain target lock on an enemy. Switch, you press it to target, and then press to switch or release. In TASing, you absolutely want to have switch targeting, because there are some techniques that will not work otherwise. C up is not one of the C buttons. It is used for a fairly limited number of things. Not a button I use a lot. You can enter your first person view and kind of look around. Beyond that, let's see, you can target an enemy and use C up to get information on them. Aside from that, it's mostly used for like some tricks that you don't see too often. Here I press Z, R, and C up together to block a damage source, and it gives me this camera glitch. If I were to do this again, the camera would be locked in first person view, and I would actually be able to move around like that. Using C up cancels the glitch. In addition, there's a glitch called time stop. I'm going to show bottle time stop here. There's a few ways to do it. I just have a bottle content in my hand, press R, then the next frame while holding R and targeting. I press the bottle content, that takes me to time stop. C up gets you out of time stop. Now, the A button. A button is kind of like the context sensitive button. It links to whatever action is on the blue circle or the action icon there. If it doesn't say anything, I can press A to pull out fairy, A to put away, roll, jump. It calls a hack. It calls a rolling an attack. I can open chests, advance through text. Now we're going to cover a pretty fundamental feature of this game, which is the mask forms. So the transformation masks are C button items. You can equip them as you would use any C button item. They normally have this cutscene associated with them whenever you put them on. This is unavoidable the first time you put on a transformation mask as human. Every other time it's avoidable. Actually, you press the mask, and then you get to this frame where it zooms in on you like this, or a frame earlier if you're using glide, and you press A. Doesn't have to be A, it can be like the B button, or it can even be the C buttons. It is not too specific. Now you may notice when I put on Deku Mask there, it kind of sits there for a second versus when I put on the Zora Mask, the camera snaps back. That's not a coincidence, but there is a way I can gain control faster. So when you put on a transformation mask as human, there's an added delay before you get control. In order to avoid that, you just need to hold a direction on the stick. First, I'm going to showcase how long this takes to get control if I don't do that. So I'm just going to look for the frame where I can punch. It is really far. Jeez. Yeah, 430. Now if I hold a direction on the stick, any direction, already, not even close. So I'll also go over some of the mask-specific abilities. First of all, the Deku, instead of his usual actions, he has the A button to spin, which gives you this like spike in speed, and then it decrements to 4.8 about over a set period of time. B button shoots these bubbles. The longer you hold the button, the bigger the bubble and the further it will travel. There is some RNG in how these bubbles travel, which is just a delight. Deku can also use the A button to dive into these flowers, release, and you go up, press A again, you can drop. When you're flying like this, the B button uses Deku Nuts instead of their normal functions. Goron, his A button curls into this like ball, and then you can roll around at fairly decent speeds. The longer you roll around it, as so long as you have magic, you build up towards this spike roll, which travels really fast. It does use magic though. While you're curled and not spike rolling, you can press B to do the pound, and he's got his double punch and butt attack combo on the B button. Both Deku and Goron also have this kind of funny hunker down shield. You can't target and move around with this, you can just kind of cower. Zora Link has a regular shield. Overall, Zora Link is probably the most similar to Human Link. He's got a lot of the same moves, a lot of the same functions, just some adjustments. While holding shield, you can press B to do this barrier that stuns enemies, damages some other enemies, but it's usually a stun. If you hold B, he's got these boomerangs. So this isn't a very useful technique, but I want to show it. If you release them, then transform back, you can shoot multiple sets of boomerangs. Just a fun little thing you can do. Now where Zora really shines is in the water, and we'll go over this in more detail when we get to the water section of the video. But hold R while swimming around. You can use the barrier pretty much whenever in the water. On the Japanese version, you have to be swimming like this to use the barrier. Can't do it from just a floating standstill. You can press B to sink and A to swim. You can attack like normal while underwater. And I'm going to go back on land real quick and put away my fins so I can actually do things correctly. While underwater, you can also do your standard rolls. And you can do side ups and backflips, but they don't quite work normally. Underwater, you kind of get stalled immediately. First thing to talk about with movement in this game is the camera. When you're just walking around, the camera kind of loosely follows you. And of course, Z recenters the camera behind you. But it's a little more involved than that. So here I'm running to the side. I'll just use this virtual pad like that. Press Z and then I hold forward. You will see that is not a very continuous line. I get this wonky angle. And that is because after you press Z, despite the camera visually rotating, nothing functionally actually happens for several frames. So there you can see I did nothing. I just kept holding down, and then I immediately switched to holding up, and I get a perfect continuous run. So see, and there you go. This is generally going to be pretty consistent, but uh, when you enter areas, there can sometimes be like a brief camera lock where it can make it take longer. A lot of times going through a door in a dungeon makes it take 1 frame longer. And now if I turn before it's finished updating, you can see I make the camera kind of snap. That's because the camera will rotate to the direction you're facing within however many frames are remaining of the thing. Additionally, when you climb ledges like this and press Z, sometimes the camera will kind of rotate like that. Same deal. It is functionally like literally nothing happened. And then in a single moment, it'll all update at once. So you can see if I switch to holding right there, I go way more down than just right. Also, if on the last frame of the camera adjusting, I press a new direction and then target lock again, I can actually lock the camera at angles like this where Link is not facing the way he should be. This is known as inverted camera. Not the best name because you can pick a lot more angles than just behind. Try it here. So here I set the camera sideways. Now, another thing, see when I'm going around normally, that can kind of go around perfectly, but if I were to suffer a severe injury, the camera zooms in like this. And then, despite holding perfectly forward, I'm not even using the joystick, I'm just holding up on like a basically a D-pad. You'll notice Link kind of walks around like he's a little bit drunk. This is known as critical health camera. Alright, now for actual movement. Walking around, Link will kind of rotate to match the way you're holding the joystick. He will always turn before starting to walk, even if he's already facing the way you pressed. So here I'll hold up, and then I'll hold him up again for 1 frame, and see he doesn't actually move, he just turns to face the way he's already facing. When walking, you accelerate by 2 units per frame, up to a speed of 5.5. You can make fairly sharp turns walking. Also, if I press opposite the direction I'm running, I can instantly cut quite a bit of speed. If I recall correctly, this cuts 8 speed per frame, and then I can make a sharp turn like that. Now, if I were to tap to face up, but not actually run, and then switch directions, that still puts me in like a walking state. So then I'll do this little rounded walk to the right instead of just walking to the right normally. There's also rolling. Rolling has a top speed of 8.25. And when you roll by holding forward on the stick and pressing A, or you can roll by holding Z and pressing A. If you don't hold forward on the stick while rolling, it gets only up to a speed of 3. And when you roll for 1 frame, your speed remains what it was, and then accelerates by 2 units per frame up to 8.25. If you hold partial stick inputs, you can kind of get partial speeds of that, which could be useful if you want to make like micro adjustments to your position. Slopes do affect your speed quite a bit with regular movements. Now, next up, we have backwalking. Backwalking has the same top speed as rolling, but it doesn't necessarily stop. It is a continuous form of movement, which makes it good for distances. However, its acceleration, it takes longer to get going, and it only accelerates by 1.5 units per frame, as you can see. So if you're traveling a very short distance, then this is generally not your best option. I find it's always a good idea to test your movement options before just assuming what is good. Additionally, you can hold a little bit off of straight down to angle your backwalks. Something to note is if I hold straight down and then angle it to the right, you can see my move angle increments towards the right, like it sort of curves to its maximum angle. If I do it to the left, though, there is no increment. It just instantly goes to its maximum angle. Even from maximum rightward angling, it just instantly changes. I'm not really sure what the reason for this is, but it can be a good thing to know. You can also, when you release C out of a backwalk, you'll turn around and you can maintain that speed for a frame and then roll. And this could be useful because rolling, rolling takes you out of the walking animation, so you can make a very sharp turn. Right here, the frame before it goes to 0.25. Sharp turn. And again, if you want to turn and backwalk, you have to consider the camera. In normal circumstances, I turn, target, and again, don't just keep holding down like that. You'll see he kind of runs forward before doing the backwalk. You'll want to hold opposite to the direction you turned until speed is 4.5, depending on where you do it. If you do it coming out of an entrance, it might be a little bit longer. Then you switch to holding down, and you get nice, clean backwalk acceleration. And jumping off of ledges, you get a full jump if you're going at high enough speed. Your speed in the air will gradually decrement towards your walking speed, 5.5. It does it quite slowly, though. Only about 0.05 or 0.1 per frame. You can also do this out of a backwalk if you turn at the right moment. And if you go off with partial speed, you notice he doesn't get as high of a jump, which can be useful if you want to land quicker. And then you can hold to accelerate gradually up to 5.5 if you would like. And if you don't hold anything when you jump off of a ledge, your speed will decrease beyond 5.5. And jump attacks I want to go over real quick. When I do a jump attack, you'll notice there's this kind of long animation where he's holding a sword on the ground like that. If I, right as he lands, rotate the stick like I would for a spin attack, just go to 4 different quadrants approximately 90 degrees apart, 4 frames of that, and then I can press any direction. I completely cancel that landing animation. And this also works with the Great Fairy Sword. Oops. Primarily I'm trying to do that. There we go. It works with Zora's jump attack. Worth noting though, for whatever reason, it does not work with Deku sticks. Try as you might, you cannot do jump slash cancels with Deku sticks. I'm really not sure why this is, it just is. Next up, if you've ever watched Zelda 64 TASs, you've probably seen this side hopping all over the place. This is a pretty powerful movement option. So pick an angle, hold 90 degrees to the right of that angle because of the camera target, and then the next frame I press A, and that gets me instantly up to 8.5 speed, which then will gradually decrease as I'm in the air. Once it decreases by a full unit from 7.7 to 6.7, or slightly different if you're on a slope. I can press A again to do another side hop. This is a strong movement option because its acceleration is instantaneous. Now here I'm going to release Z at the moment I do the side hop, and that kind of lets the camera unlock. So then the moment I hit the ground at 6.7, I can turn and pick a new angle. If I were to not have released Z, then I would have to wait a frame longer before turning. 7.8, then I switch to holding left or right. Depending on how you hold the joystick during the side hops, you can hold opposite your side hop momentum to choke out your side hop, or you can hold like slightly angled up or down to make it go a little bit forward or a little bit backward. Now here, I'm going to show a slope. As you can see, this causes me to land sooner, which means I don't lose as much speed. So side hopping up slopes is pretty good. Side hopping down slopes, not as much, but it can still be good. Next up, we have backflipping. Backflipping has instant acceleration as well, but it gets up to a speed of 6 and then decreases towards 5.5. You can use the same principles as side hops to know when it's time to do another backflip. There it goes down to 4.5. I could do another backflip here. I'm just going to show I can also do a side hop out of that. We'll see by my fall speed that backflips get quite a bit more height when you do them. There it was like, what was it, 6.8 versus 3.5. Now it's not very fast. It's not generally good for covering distances quickly, but it is good for getting up like little ledges like this. So usually what I would do is I would turn, target, and then backflip and release Z on the frame I backflip, so that as soon as I land I can turn and continue with some other form of movement. Or if I wanted to backwalk out of that, I would just continue to hold Z. Backflips can also be angled pretty sharply by holding to just left or right on the joystick. And if I don't hold anything on the stick, you'll see my backflip speed decreases much faster towards 0. Now to cover some of the other mask forms. The other mask forms, their walking is 6 instead of 5.5. Backwalking is 9 instead of 8.25. You'll see their side hopping speed. Uh, it also starts at 8.5, but it decreases at a slightly different rate. Interesting thing to know about Gorn is that he has heavier gravity. So you'll see, even though his side up decreases speed at the same rate as the other forms, I will land sooner. This makes Goron side hops the best side hops in the game, which is kind of funny because he has this Goron roll, so you hardly ever use them. Because this is just so much better. I want to go over Deku a bit more, because Deku also has a unique thing with his aerial movements. He is the only form that is able to kind of freely rotate in the air while the camera's unlocked. He'll rotate towards the direction of his travel. So here I'll side hop, and release Z. And you'll see he rotates in the air. And I can press Z before I land. And do another side up immediately. I don't even have to land and turn. I can turn in the air during the side hop. It also puts Deku side hops a tier above human side hops. Plus, you can actually like freely let go Z in the air. You don't have to do it right when you side hop. Now, Deku spins. When you do a spin, you get an instant boost of speed, which then, over the duration of the spin, decreases to this 4.88 value. I can do this, for instance, out of turning from a backwalk, and then you'll see my speed goes to 10.32, and then it starts decreasing. When I was doing it just out of walking, I got a speed boost over more frames, because as you get to higher and higher speeds, it kind of caps off how much it's going to accelerate you. Here, I'm going to show 20 speed, where it instantly just starts decreasing over the duration of the spin. You don't ever get to 20 speed going forward with Deku, but just showing that it does have a limit. Now, you see here, when I spin, I show that my facing angle is actually changing throughout the course of the spin. And that can be important. If I want to jump off of a ledge as Deku, it's important that during the spin, he has to be facing about forward to be able to go off the ledge. See there, he was facing backwards, he just falls. There you can see, I get the jump. Deku doesn't jump very far off of ledges. Goron doesn't jump at all. And Zora's about the same as human. Here I'm going to show going up ledges. There's 3 different types of ledge climbs. You've got your jump step, your regular climb, and your jump grab. Now with all of these, you kind of have to like brush against the wall for a moment before he'll grab it. Unless press A when you're against the wall. If you do that, you will skip the waiting and just immediately climb. So 93.092, remember that. Then without a 93.110. Different forms have different ledge climbing capacities. You can see Deku, I will show. He's shorter, so he can't climb as high. He only has the ledge climb and the jump step. He does not have a jump grab. Now Goron has... He's taller, so he can get up a bit higher. He has a jump step, but he is missing the other two. He doesn't have jump grab or just climb. And Zora has all three that Human Link has. Because again, Zora is the closest to being human. See, because he's so much taller, he can get up pretty high. Now you may think, I've seen people get up this ledge with Deku even though he can't. He's too short to climb it. And that is because of a trick we're about to go over here. I'm just gonna kind of casually do this. That is called a gainer. Now to do a gainer, I'm gonna show that while I'm against this wall, see I can't climb here. Now if I turn to be slightly off center and I press Z, it immediately adjusts my move angle and my facing angle into the wall. You can see there, and press Z, and boom, it realigns me to the wall. Now if I then do a backflip against the wall and release Z as soon as I do the backflip, and then the first frame of the backflip I press Z again, you see my move angle is going to shift from away from the wall to be into the wall. And then I can grab a ledge out of that. And just to show what's actually happening here, I'm going to go to this lower spot, and you'll see it actually completely shifts my backflip momentum to go forward instead of backward. You can do this with side hops as well. And of course the other forms can do this. For Deku, this is used to get up this ledge I showed earlier. If you're in a corner like this, sometimes your Z repress timing can actually be more lenient than normal. And if you're holding back, you will still go away from the wall, so you want to make sure not to be holding back. So you can hold nothing or forward. And there you can see it in the corner. I wait an extra frame to press it, and it still works. This only is the case in corners, though, or I guess technically if you're in a weird spot where you've got a wall to your back, but that's not something you'll see very often. Goron can do gainers as well, though it's not very useful, because Goron is not able to grab ledges. So his jump step is actually just better than gainers. Now Zora, because he's so tall, gainers, and he can grab ledges, gainers can be a pretty strong way of getting a lot of height. You see, this is quite a tall ledge before me, but it is no obstacle that cannot be overcome. But there is a better way to do this. One that doesn't require me to be up against the wall. So here I'm going to show ESS position, where you basically hold slightly off of the dead zone of the joystick, and you'll know you've got it when Link does that like shuffle turn. If you're walking slowly like this, then you're holding too far. And target during that, you can kind of lock his angle, and get him to do the shuffling animation. If during that you press a direction, he'll turn to face that direction and then adjust back. So I tap one direction, then tap opposite the direction to do a twisted backflip, and I can grab a ledge out of that. So there I was able to grab a high ledge without needing to do a standard gainer. And there's all sorts of variety you can get with this. Pretty much any combination of angles. Here I'm going to show. I can also do like forward side hops. I can do backward side hops, which you can immediately start then back blocking out of. Other forms are also able to do this. Like with gainers, this is particularly powerful as Zora. You can also use it for more than just side ups and backflips. Here I'm going to show that I can do a roll as soon as I get the angle change. And I can jump off of a ledge with that, and Link will correct his angle once he jumps off the ledge. And I can use this to grab high ledges like this, because the jump goes higher than a backflip. Something else I use pretty often, forward side hops to grab a short ledge in front of you, just to reduce travel time. This is a fairly common thing to do. You can also do these twisted flips by getting a diagonal walk with a speed greater than 0 and less than 1. Then you will release the stick for 2 frames. It's important that it's that speed because that's the speed that will decrease to 0 in 1 frame, just organically. Then after those 2 frames, you press a direction, and you can twist and backflip. This will be relevant mostly in the hovering section. I have used this a couple of times on the ground. In my 10 years of testing this game, I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've used that on the ground, but it can come up. So it's a good option to know. Alright, so the items, I'm going to cover all these. Most of these, I'm going to give a fairly simple explanation for because they don't do a whole lot. Others, I'll give a little bit more in depth, but we're going to cover what all of them do. Those 3 slots on the right there are for trade quest items. Ocarina here, you can pull it out and play notes. This is used to play the various songs for things like fast travel. Other benefits, the bow you can use to shoot arrows. We'll go over the bow more in detail, along with things like the hookshot, because they're interesting. It's got its variants of fire, ice, and light arrows, which do as you would expect. Fire arrows can light torches, melt ice. Ice arrows can create platforms on water or freeze enemies to make like pushable blocks. And light arrows, when you kill something with a light arrow, usually it's going to drop a 50 rupee. There's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, enemies killed by light arrows will drop 50 rupees. Bombs, bomb chews, and sticks. So bombs are a stationary explosive. You can pick them up, throw them, carrying them around. Bomb chews are a mobile explosive. You drop them. And I should mention you can drop held items with shield. I kind of take that for granted. I don't think about it much. I just do it without really considering it. Yeah, bomb chews will travel along walls, floors, and ceilings. You can have 3 explosives out at a time, no more. Stick is a melee weapon with a fairly simple set of attacks. If you hit something with a stick, it will break. Deku Nuts, Magic Beans. Deku Nuts are thrown, they can stun enemies. Some enemies die to them outright. Usually that's not the case. Magic Beans, if you find a patch of soft soil, an example, when you play through the game casually, you use a Magic Bean to plant in soft soil outside Deku Palace to get up to the top level. You can plant it and then water it to grow a bean plant that you can ride. Powder Keg is a special type of explosive that can destroy stronger objects. Only Goron is allowed to use it. You can see, despite my efforts, Human Link cannot pick it up. You can only carry one of those at a time. The Pictobox lets you take pictures. Sadly, on emulator, it does this. There are some video plugins where it's a little less egregious, but I have not seen a video plugin where it actually like functions in any respectable capacity. The Lens of Truth allows you to see hidden objects or fit through fake objects. Hookshot is another first-person aiming item that can be used to pull yourself to objects or objects to you. Controls the same way as the bow and arrow. Great Fairy Sword is a powerful weapon, the strongest weapon in the game, not counting Fierce Deity's sword. It has a more diverse set of attacks than the Deku Stick, and you can even quick spin with it. You can't quick spin with the Deku Stick. Then we have bottles. Bottles are used to capture and use various bottled items. For instance, I'll drink my completely non-suspicious half milk here. Experienced players will know what I was playing with if I have half milk. I can drop a fish, I can catch a fish. Moving on to the mask screen, we have, I'm going to cover these pretty briefly. Postman's hat, all-night mask, blast mask. Postman's hat is used to check the mailboxes. You can get a heart piece from that. All Night Mask is used to stay up during Grandma's stories so you can answer her questions correctly. Blast Mask is an instantaneous explosive. It has a 15.5 second cooldown, so it has some drawbacks, but it can be pretty helpful. Plus you can shield it. Stone Mask, Great Fairy Mask, and Keaton Mask. The Stone Mask makes you undetectable to almost every enemy in the game. There is like one exception that I can think of off the top of my head, which is the Gerudo Pirate Warriors. Great Fairy Mask will draw any roaming stray fairies towards you. A Keaton Mask, if you destroy a set of bushes like the one in North Clocktown that kind of jitter around while wearing this, the Keaton will appear and you can answer his questions for a heart piece. The Brahmin Mask allows you to march. This is used to grow up the cuckoos in the cuckoo shack for a heart piece. Also gives you this nice tune. The bunny hood makes your forward walking speed equal to your backward walking speed, which I know we haven't talked about that, but it only works if you're not holding target. If you are holding target, then you just move normally. Dongaro Mask is used to gather the frogs in Mountain Village in springtime for a heart piece. Also, I lied, we have talked about backwalking. I'm recording the audio for this a little out of order. The Mask of Sense makes Link have some funny sound effects, but it also lets you sniff out magic mushrooms that you can give to the Magic Hag's potion shop in exchange for blue potions. Romani Mask is proof of membership at the milk bar. It lets you buy the Chateau Romani, which is definitely not drugs. The Circus Leader's Mask makes you cry. It makes it so the Gorman brothers do not attack you during the side quest, which is useless because you need to go through that side quest to even obtain it. Cafe Mask uses triggers alternate dialogues for certain NPCs so you can progress through the Anju and Cafe side quest. Couples Mask is used to settle an argument in Mayor's residence so that you can get a heart piece. Mask of Truth lets you listen to thoughts of animals or interact with gossip stones. There's a gossip stone actually right over here, so I'm just going to go quickly demonstrate that. So, Mystical Stone responds to you, but normally that's all you get. Symbol of Marriage, Couple's Mask seems to have the power to calm and silence arguments. That's what I was just talking about. The Kamaro Mask gives you these sweet dance moves. I don't see why you would want to do anything else in this game. Gibdo Mask lets you interact with the Gibdos in the well for the trading sequences in there. It also prevents Gibdos and Ritas from attacking you. The Garo Mask summons Garo ninjas. It's used to gain access to Akana Canyon. They'll also attack you while you're in there if you're wearing it. If you beat them, they'll give you various tips. It's also the coolest looking mask in the game. The Captain's Hat is used to interact with Stal children. You can order them to dig up graves in the graveyard, or they'll give you the code for the mask sequence in Oceanside Spider House. The Giant's Mask I can't even use here. It's used in the Twin Mold boss fight to become large. And the Fierce Deity Mask is also used in boss fights to become not as large, but still pretty large and very powerful. Now, things I wanted to cover in more detail, explosives. These are a very important part to speedrunning this game. So, bombs have a, what was it, a 69 frame timer when you pull them out before they explode. And bomb chews have a 119 frame timer before they explode. Ways you can set them off early is pretty useful. For instance, bombs, if an enemy collides with it, it'll set it off. You can shoot the bomb with an arrow to set it off if you don't somehow miss it like that. That can be helpful. Bombs can also be set off early with bomb chews. A bomb chew can collide with it and destroy it. This only works against walls or on slopes, though on flat ground, no dice. Even against an edge like this, still nothing. Explosions will also trigger any nearby explosives. Bomb chews are more more dynamic with how you can set them off. Of course, enemies, pretty much any actor they run into will set them off. Because they run along walls and floors and ceilings, if you drop one mid-air with the shield, it'll have nothing to go on, it'll just blow up. You can, if I can demonstrate this correctly. No. There we go. You can hit them with the sword and they'll blow up. And you can also shoot them, but that's going to take me all day to get that on keyboard, so we're not going to do that. Bomb chews also can collide with each other if you release them in rapid succession. This will usually happen at different vertices where polygons come together. If you're moving forward, you can drop them literally on top of each other and they'll just blow up like that. You can also detonate bomb chews by just rolling into them. And the blast mask I'll talk about a little bit more. The blast mask serves as a truly instantaneous explosive. It does have a long cooldown, but it still has some application. You can see the bomb chews. I have to go through a few frames of animation actually pulling the bomb chew out. With the blast mask, as soon as I press the button, there's a detonation. There's no delay whatsoever. Except for the 15.5-second delay you have to spend waiting for it to recharge, but we don't talk about that. Now, going on to first-person items like hookshot and bow. First of all, the y-axis is inverted, so press down and you aim up as God intended. Takes a moment before you start actually aiming. Then release the button to actually fire. Now I want to show here, I'm going to get the frame that I am able to move after getting to this chest. You can see how holding the stick a little differently impacts my aiming. So I found that frame I turn on to make a save state there. Now you can also aim the hookshot while holding Z. You can only aim up or down Like this, you can like sidestep, but you generally want to avoid that. We'll go over why in a bit. But when I aim like this, first thing I like to do is figure out how soon I can release and fire. So let's go back here. So we'll aim up, too high. Too low. That'll work. I'll make a very tiny adjustment. Once you've fired it, you no longer have to keep holding Z. Now let's find out how quick this is to let me move around after hooking this chest. There we go. So, fair bit quicker. And play this one back. You can see what that looks like in first person view versus Z aiming view. Z aiming just feels faster and it looks nicer. Yeah, even if I turn around, pressing down still aims up, but because the camera, I like move a bit. When you do that, moving side to side with an aggressive vertical aim, it really messes you up. You can see I cannot fire there on that frame where I fired before. It's delaying my ability to fire. So you'll have to be mindful of that when using Z aiming. That's actually the whole reason I like to start out by finding the first frame I can let go of the C button or fire my first person item. Now, something to note, while Z aiming is generally faster, you can see I kind of slow down in my change in vertical angle as I go higher and higher up. What this means, let me find just the common vertical aiming point, 14014. So that to do a frame earlier because that's just how it works. That's too far. There we go. So 1413, that frame. Keep that frame in mind. That's the frame I release the hook shot. Now aiming with standard first person mode, if I have to aim really, really high, that happens quite a bit faster. So eventually there's a point where you have to aim up high enough or down far enough to where it's better to do it in first person. That being said, you can still aim pretty high pretty quickly in Z aiming. Now I want to show here, if I press hookshot and then just move normally, I can't get very far. But if I press Z, during the frames the camera is adjusting, I can actually not enter normal shooting mode, but I can still like charge up the hook shot or be loading an arrow into the bow. So this is basically a trick that lets you move while setting up a shot. It's more possible to avoid getting your shot delayed due to harsh aiming when you use this, but more importantly, it's faster. Pretty much anywhere that you can do this without just stopping and pressing Z for no reason, this will save you frames. I'm going to go over here so I can go ahead and demonstrate a good use for it. So we're going to side hop towards that chest. On the second side hop, I'm going to release Z. And now we're going to find a frame to press Z and then press bow on the next frame. Or not bow, hook shot. This works with either, so sometimes I say the wrong thing. There we go. Did you see that? Very briefly, but Link does turn that way with the hook shot, and he's already like pulled it back a fair amount of the way it needs charged before he's even started. You could see how much slower it is if I have to do this manually. That looks like a good angle. And there we can use the hook shot. So now we can begin aiming. Oh, that didn't work. That was not aggressive enough. Getting your shot after doing this perfect is a little bit finicky. There we go. And there's what that looks like. Now, as I was having a slip of the tongue a few times, this does work with the bow as well. All these techniques work with any first-person item, really. Even like Deku bubbles, this will all work with. I measure the metric of how I fire these. For the hook shot, I actually look for when I see the hook, and I gauge whether it's even worth looking at by when I can release the button to shoot it. For the bow, I release the button when I see Link grab an arrow, and I base my timing on when I see the arrow count go down. So right there, 150, 105. 15105, I guess. There's also this thing you can do, item swapping, where if you frame perfectly cycle between pulling out two different items, then you can actually bypass certain triggers. Like, uh, it's not as prominent in this game as it was in OT, but for instance, the owl, Kapora, Gabora, if he wants to talk to you, you can do this while walking through his text trigger and just disregard him. Now, the rhythm that you have to do this at is going to be a little different depending on the two items you're using. So with the stick and the sword, it's going to be a little bit different. It'll start the same, but then it'll deviate. It will not continue deviating after it's first deviated, though. It'll just be what it is. Yeah, so there you go. I went with the usual timing, and that didn't work. So then I just adjust my timing accordingly after that, and things work. Now I happen to know that auto-firing sword and first-person item alternatively works perfectly for this. That is, if you don't have a stick out, I should say. And this does nothing to interrupt your movement whatsoever. You can't side hop while doing this, but that's really the only restriction. You can just keep going around like that as long as you please. Now going on to some of this game's most characteristic tricks. First thing I'm going to do is come over here and get hit by this guy. You'll see that I get iframes, or invincibility frames. But there's actually two types of iframes in this game. If I roll, I get negative iframes, and then each frame those increment towards 0. These iframes slightly outlast your roll, and the important part of these is if you get hit during these iframes, you don't just avoid damage. Right there you see I got negative speed when that guy hit me. So getting that speed is one thing, but there's a few ways we can preserve that speed. It works off any damage source, but we're going to use a bomb for this. There's a 2-frame timing window where you can roll and still have control after the end of your roll with the iframes. So just looking for that frame. And if I hold a direction, you see it kind of shoots off like that. That's an indication that I got the frame I want. It's also the first frame after you take damage, or the second frame after that. There I rolled late, and you saw he didn't go very far. So now let's roll again on the correct frame. We call this the TAS frame. Now I'm going to hold a direction. He shoots off. But if I want to preserve that speed, right when I turn, I'm going to press Z for a frame, then I'm going to release Z for a frame. Press it for a frame, release it for a frame, press it for a frame, release it for a frame. This timing can be influenced by lag a little bit. Here I'm going to do auto fire, and it's going to drop a speed, but basically whenever you press or release C, your move angle, unless you're against a wall, is locked, and also your speed is locked. So if I get to this high speed and then just frame perfectly press Z, my speed does not decrease. Now here you're going to see a little bit of an obstacle, and this is one of the places where being able to control on lag frames helps. This guy is going to mess it up. The trick still works essentially the same, except I have to change up my Z press timing to target him and then manually untarget him. So I press Z for a frame, and it doesn't matter which way you hold down on the stick, as long as you're holding roughly down to untarget. So press Z to target him. Next frame, I release Z for an input frame, press it for an input frame, and release to untarget. We'll keep this up until I am no longer targeting him. Right there. And switch back to normal. Now this travels in a straight line as well. You can stop it by either pressing shield or just holding back on the stick, because your move angle is technically forward with negative speed, so holding away from forward will stop you. On frames that you're not pressing Z, you can hold to the sides and rotate at the cost of 2 speed every frame. You can also do it on frames where you are pressing Z by using basically a diagonal forward walk, as so. I'll stop it by just holding down. See, holding down decreases my speed by 8 every frame. Now, another really common way of preserving speed we're going to show off here. First things first, find the frame. There we go. Oops. Safe state there. And now, we talked a little bit about ESS position. Basically this range on the stick slightly outside the dead zone where Link will kind of shuffle and turn, but not actually move. If you hold this position, and you want to hold it in a direction that's not forward so that he'll actually do the turning. When in this animation, Link's speed becomes locked. And then I can use target to prevent him from turning. And have free rotating slide. And I can turn either way based on how I hold the stick. I can also maintain it without having to press target by just ensuring that the stick is always being held in a direction that is not forward relative to Link. Now say I want to make a sharp turn. I can hold a direction like this, and then link's facing will change, and we can actually convert this to a Z slide. When I was doing the slide where I could turn and rotate freely, that is called a HES, or a hyper-extended super slide. And Z slide gets its name from the button that you press to do it. More major type of slide that you'll probably be using regularly here. Not as regularly as HES and Z slide, but still pretty often. Finding the frame. There you go. This one is an A slide, or analog slide, named after the analog stick, not after the A button. So it's done pretty much the exact same way as a Z slide, except you use the stick. You can do it as I'm doing here. I hold a direction that would give me a backwalk for a frame, release it, hold the direction for a backwalk for a frame. That gives me a negative speed traveling backwards, so I move forward at high velocity. And just like backwalks can be angled, this slide can also be angled slightly. You want to be a little careful. This slide is kind of unstable. If I just stop doing it, you'll see that the game crashes like that. Stop it by holding forward or by shielding, or you can just let Link turn around. You could even convert to a Z slide off of that. Not much reason to, since you'd be traveling in the same direction you already were, and if you were doing a forward A slide, odds are you'd be doing it because you want to be facing forward. I say forward A slide because you can also do a backward A slide. There's my frame. To do this, you basically hold any direction that will not give you forward walking or backwards walking. I usually use just roughly to the side, but it honestly does not make a difference. Something else kind of nice you can do with this is if you hold forward-ish to get like that diagonal walk, you'll see Link kind of switches to that angle sliding backwards. It's very much dependent on that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find the steepest angle that I can do that at. Right. There's our limit. So I'm going to keep holding Z, hold the stick to get that turn, then release Z, and I can convert to a Z slide with a significant angle change. And also without speed loss. And you don't have to just be standing still when you do these, you can backwalk to gain some distance. There you saw I also dropped the bomb slightly early so that I roll into it when I do the slide. Just so it stalls some of my forward momentum, so I'm not traveling away from where I want to be going. There is another type of slide. Typically this is used in real-time runs, but it does have some application in TASs. First thing, again, find that HES frame. That was not even close. It's kind of hard because I can't see the bomb. I don't actually have the number of frames you have to wait memorized. It Seems like an annoying number to count to and just memorize, so I just figure it out. I don't find it takes that much time to do so. There we go, 610. So here I'm gonna shield and roll, and try to grab the bomb while holding shield. And to maintain this one, all you have to do is hold the R button. Now here I'm gonna release shield and hold ESS position, and that'll give me this partial speed slide that I can then rotate. That is where ESS position gets its name from, actually. This is called extended super slide. That's where ESS's name comes from, extended super slide position. Now this slide doesn't technically have to be on the 2 frames that you normally get a Hess off of, but if you're doing it off of just a bomb, it does, because it relies on a grabbable object like a bomb, and if you're doing it not on those 2 frames, then there won't be a bomb for you to grab. If I come over to these bushes, though, I can demonstrate that it's going to be very lenient over here. So I'll find my frame. Works. 74 is their last frame. So let's go later than that. And I could just do it there. All I really need is negative iframes and an object to grab and a damage source. Also, when you release the slide, if at all possible, Link will try to pick up the item that you did the slide off of. Let's do it even later here, just to show that this is truly very lenient if you're not doing it off of a bomb. If you're doing it off of the bomb you're using as a damage source, then it's still not bad. You just can't get these silly slides where you're still rolling as you're sliding. Now I can get a lenient slide off of a bomb if the bomb is not my damage source. In this case, I'm going to cause an early explosion by using a bomb chew on a slope. This is known as a quick slide. I just want to showcase here, if I were to roll early and fail the Hess, or not the Hess, the super slide in that manner, you can see my buttons aren't doing anything. At least most of them. This is it because failing the slide in that method, it activates an unusual glitch called ground jump. If I come over here, I try to backflip, he just kind of like pops up in the air like that and grabs the ledge. This could be useful at Ocarina of Time, not so much in Majora's Mask, because gainers exist, and you can grab ledges out of them. And it doesn't go any higher than a gainer, so really not a valuable ability in this game. Now, here you can see I super slide, and I continue sliding through the air during that cutscene. That's because super slides have that unusual property. That's where they could be useful in a TAS. Now there's something else I want to show with A slides here. A slides kind of take a moment longer to like actually get going than Z slides, so you might wonder why you would ever want to use them. Well, there's a pretty valuable trick you can do with them using a first-person item. Now, it does require some patience. This trick is really finicky. It's very temperamental, very unstable. So let's do my A slide. And we'll make a save state there. And you saw when I pull the bow, he kind of twitches around. There, it crashed. So we'll continue this A slide for a bit and see what we can get to happen. Let's kind of observe how he fidgets around as I'm doing this, with different durations of extending the slide and different joystick angles. That looks about like what I want. So then if I not like that, that was a game crash. If I continue the slide and then release Z at one of those moments where the camera kind of shoots around, I can actually displace the camera with the first person item. And I am shooting from underneath the bridge. So you could like shoot through floors, shoot through walls. You can't Z aim with a weird shot, but it is still a very powerful technique. And you saw when I was doing the camera was shooting around all over the place. There is variety in what you can do here. Like a lot of variety. Those are two of the generally useful variations that you saw there. But I also get this stupid one where I'm like facing to the side and can't see what I'm shooting at. Let's see if I can... And there's this one which also goes off to the side like the one you saw earlier, but it doesn't go as much off to the side. So if you need to aim at something directly in front of you, it's useful. Here I'm going to showcase a weird shot with a hook shot, how that can be helpful. You can get up to this chest that normally there's no good angle for me to reach it from. And now, something you'll have seen if you've watched TASs of this game before is doing any of these slides off of just one bomb tube by rolling into it. A lot of people have trouble with this. In theory, it's simple. In practice, not so much. So I run until I have 4 speed, pull the bomb. I pull a bomb tube, run until I have 4 speed, press Z and R, then roll, and just hold forward. And you'll see, those are the correct inputs, but it didn't work. So let's try a different angle slightly. We'll do the same exact inputs, and now I hit the bomb tube too early. This is highly dependent on the angle you're moving at. I don't know exactly why, but probably the reason this gives so many people trouble is because they may be doing it right, but they may not think, oh, let me just make a tiny adjustment in the angle and no adjustment in the timing. That'll make a difference. It doesn't make sense, but it does make the difference. So this angle works. And I'm losing some speed because lag timing things, but as you can see, I can do proper slides off of this. I'm gonna do one again where that was kind of best case scenario. Here, I'll show this again real quick. show that I can do more than one type of slide off of this. I'm not really worried about getting the slide speed and timing perfect. I just want to show that it can be done. So I messed up the joystick timing slightly, so I only got a 16.5 A slide, not an 18 speed A slide. Now I want to show that you can do this at a variety of angles. So I'm going to try to turn and roll back and then do a Hess off of this. There, 396 is the frame I have to switch to holding up because camera. So we'll switch to holding up there. And we missed the bomb shoe, so we need to make an adjustment to that angle. I usually work in increments of 5 and then narrow down from there. There we go. Like a save state. And let's roll to like here, and then I can hold the SS position. Too early to press target. I hadn't started shuffling yet. And you can see, it works. Slide tricks are great for when you're going along the ground, but you're not always going along the ground. Sometimes you have to go through the air. And because speed decay is slower in the air, you can take advantage of that. Because you also get high speed boost when you shield a damage source. If you do that in the air, you will retain that speed pretty well. Not perfectly, but pretty well. So here I'm just showcasing a basic recoil flip where I do a backflip. And as soon as I initiate the backflip, I pull out a bomb chew and I hold shield. Very important. You do not want to be holding down after the recoil flip has started, or else you're going to choke your speed out. As you can see, right here, I'm holding down and I just drop like a stone. I can hold it left or right, however, and that will cause my recoil flip to curve. I can vary the severity of it as well by holding just a little bit to the side. And this doesn't have to be done out of backflips, you can do it out of side hops, for instance. Backflips just give you the most height, so generally it's what people use. It can be done with any damage sources here. I'm going to do it with a bomb. If you watch the fall speed, you'll see that shielding the explosive does not disrupt the fall speed. So the earlier you block the explosion in your backflip or side hop, the more distance you'll get. And again, if you're turning and doing this, be sure to keep the camera in mind. So I hold the opposite direction of my turn until 5.6 speed. Then I hold down for exactly one frame if I do a first frame bomb chew pull. And there we go. Now you can also do recoils off of these jumps. And these jumping off of a ledge gets you much more height than a backflip. It might seem kind of pointless, it just blows you back onto the ledge, right? But there is an application for this. And this is gonna take us back to the twisted roll jumps from the movement section. So I'll turn and start ESS shuffling. Pick a direction and do twisted roll jump off the ledge. So this way I'm rolling towards the ledge, and then when I jump off, I'm facing a different direction. So I'll find the first one to pull bomb shoe. There we go. And just like that, this goes very far. Here, I'm going to showcase that you can also maintain some middle range speed slides out of doing a recoil flip. So I just release Z when I do the backflip. I have to be holding R for at least one frame before I do that. Otherwise I won't shield the explosion, I'll just get hit. And because this unlocked the camera, I get actionable as soon as I touch the ground, which lets me immediately start ESSing. It can be 8.4 speed, which is slightly faster than the 8.25 of the backbook. Can also do it as a Z-slide. Z-slide, pretty much anything can be turned into a Z-slide. Now, if I were to try to do the same thing with a bomb shoot, because I don't have the camera lock, I can't actually shield in the air. However, there's still a way to retain a slide out of this. Not a ESS slide, but I can do a Z slide with this, which I will showcase here. So I'll turn, target, start the backflip, pull bomb shoe, and hold shield. Standard stuff. Now hold forward during this, and not there. If I pick the right frame to start alternating Z, then I can retain a Z slide off of that, and there's some variation you can get off of this as well. So if I don't hold perfectly forward, if I hold off to the side a little bit, I can actually turn and do this. Maintaining slides like this out of recoil flips is generally a pretty good thing if you're going a short distance. If you need a quick blast, I'm just going to show here something I do somewhat often in short TASs is I'll get two bomb shoes to collide with each other and do a long recoil flip like that. And I can slide out of it. And there's another technique I can do with recoil flips. I don't know that there's actually a name for this. I just call it chain recoil flipping. I first saw someone do this actually during one of my older TAS competitions, and I had never seen it before. This only works on areas with like correct variation in elevation of the floor. Fortunately, flat ground is one of those correct variations. So I do a recoil flip, and now, as soon as I get the speed for the recoil flip, I can actually interrupt the shield and pull out an item like sword, hookshot, and the important one here, I can pull out another bomb shoe. Gotta make sure to do it on the first frame that you get the speed. Before will just blow you up, and after simply won't work. So pull this, and I find the last frame that I can drop the bomb to its shield and have it explode. Now if the timing lines up right, I'll land on the ground shortly after, and then I could do another backflip, just like that. And then guess what? I can do it again. Because this slope change, there is none. It works on this. So I find that shield drop frame. There we go. And let's do it again. Now do bear in mind that explosions in this game tend to produce a fair amount of lag. So in a lot of areas, if you're doing this just constantly, you're going to lose a lot of lag. And here is just the kind of speed you get from doing that, because I can't really showcase what it looks like in frame by frame very well. And now this is not a recoil flip, but it is another form of aerial recoil. And I'm not going to go over this one too much. This is exactly as simple as it looks. Just be facing towards a ledge and take damage right on the edge. And off you go. Now this is something we call a mega flip. So we go back to finding the Hess frame. So I gotta do these rolls, figure out what the timing is. That looks good. Can I go earlier? No. So 409. Roll. Now at the end of the roll, instead of doing any sort of slide, I'm gonna do a backflip. And there we go. Now that gets the exact same distance as a recoil flip, and it has me traveling away from my destination. So you might be wondering how this could possibly be useful. And that'd generally be a pretty good question, but that'll come up in the next section. ISG and Hovering are some of the most commonly used tricks in this entire game. So the first part of the trick, ISG, is fairly simple. You just do a crouch stab, and you need something to interrupt that crouch stab. And here I'll use a bomb. I'll pick up the bomb on the last frame of my crouch stab. And there we go. See, if I backflip and pull out my sword, you can see my sword is kind of glowing. It is in a constant state of swinging. Now, you can get ISG in a number of ways, like picking up a bush. Let's see, there it gave me ISG. You can talk to an NPC, read a sign, open a chest, pick up a collectible like a heart piece, pick up a pot, pick up this dog, read this mailbox. ISG can also be done with the other melee weapons like Great Fairy Sword and Deku Stick. There's something else that we're going to get to here in a sec. Damage ISG. Right there, I interrupt the crouch step by taking damage on the shield. Sometimes you might need to use C up for this, depending on how your shield was hit. It's very lenient. Something to note, Navi, or Tattle ISG, with an enemy does not work in this game like it works in OOT. So now showing here I've got ISG, and if I try to walk off this ledge, I can't. Now the use of this, if I block damage in the air, I'm now floating. And take out the sword, I lose ISG. And ISG can be lost in a number of ways by swinging your sword, taking damage in the air, changing mask forms, taking damage while moving very slowly or standing still. So to do this, the inputs are literally the exact same as a recoil flip. Just instead of sending me back because I have ISG, I will instead stick in place. And you can repeat this. So as long as you've got more explosives or more sources of damage, you can gain an unlimited amount of height or distance through the air. Now I'm going to show that there's a few different frames. You can backflip out of here, and you can see you're basically treated like you're in a target, even if you're not holding Z. So here, as soon as my speed goes to -2, I can do another backflip. However, the shield is still out, so I can't pull another bomb chew right away. I can't pull another bomb chew until my speed goes to 5.7, actually. So if I want to get maximum height hovers, which involve first frame bomb chew pulls, I actually have to delay my backflip. I did find a trick to delay it slightly less, which I'll go over in just a second. So here, there's a frame where I can pull out the sword and it will start swinging. That wasn't it. 45, there we go. So 45, press B to pull out the sword. Then first frame I can backflip after -2. And the sword cancels my shield animation, and it happens to work at the timing is just right, so I can pull out a bomb chew to do a full height hover. Now, if you don't get enough height off the ground, if you're too close to the ground after hovering, you just snap back to the floor like this. But it doesn't happen immediately, so you can do a hover off the ground like that. And like I said, it works off any damage source, not just explosives. Explosives are just convenient. So now, let's return to mega flipping. So let's find that Hess frame. I can't do a recoil flip right now because I have ISG. It would just do a hover. But I can mega flip. This mega flip does not depend on the shield. And like before, I can curve this as I would a recoil flip. Same thing. Don't hold down. You'll just drop. Not only can I mega flip, I can pull out a bomb shoe and then stall myself in the air again, getting a tremendous amount of distance with only one hover. And I can stall it for any amount of time I like, choosing a variation of optimization for height or distance. Here you see I go for height and I don't get very far. Now, I do want to cover something. This is the source of one of the most common mistakes I see from new tasters, and it makes sense. Mega flips go high speed. You would think that doing mega hovers, as we call it like that, would be faster. But as you can see here, just first frame backflips and hovering, I cover this distance way faster. And that's because of all the waiting for this bomb. Now that doesn't mean mega hovers can't be fast. Here I show a crude example of how you can set up a mega hover to be fast by setting it above your initial hover. Now, when you drop a bomb chew, there's that little green triangle thing that appears above it, which is an indication that it's an object that you can target. Right there. So if I go back 2 frames from there, so I can target this thing, you'll see as soon as I target that and let go of the shield, the black bars at the top and bottom of the screen are gone. Now, I still am functioning kind of like I've got the camera lock. I still can't, like, walk normally. If I held sideways or down, I'd go funny. But I can truly turn now. So if I hold a diagonal lock forward, release for 2 frames, and then press another direction, I rotate. And I can change the direction I'm facing during a hover with this. So like say I wanted to hover around a corner, I could do that. And in fact, I don't even need to retarget to continue hovering. I could just turn and do it. And if I were to try to do this without using a targetable object to break the camera lock, then Link will turn and just immediately go back. But this could still be used, because now I could do twisted flips from a hover, and I can continue hovering like that. A lot of times where this is useful is at the end of a hover, you could do a twisted flip and then grab a ledge instead of hovering high enough to land on the ledge. I can also do something a little funny here. So let me find the Hess frame. That wasn't it, but I'm pretty sure it's the next one. And yeah. So, run some numbers. It'll take this many frames to do this turn. Then as soon as I do the turn, I roll and drop the bomb. Now on the last frame of the roll, I do the backflip. This is now a twisted backflip, but gaining mega flip speed, and we get a twisted mega flip. Alright, water. Dreaded water. So, swim around like this, and this is torture to even watch. Like, this is so slow, it's miserable. Zora exists, which makes things better. You can go along the bottom and have more or less your normal movement. But better than that, Zora has his fancy Zora swimming. You just hold A. You can swim at fairly decent speeds and rotate pretty freely. However, if I angle gently towards the surface with this, I dive out of the water. And you'll see when I dive out of the water, I get a speed boost, and when I land in the water, I get another speed boost. Now, these are temporary speed boosts, so to really make use of this, you want to do this repeatedly. The ideal situation is you get a dive out of the water as close to the surface as possible, but also with as shallow of a dive as possible. Here I'm just kind of winging it with RTA inputs, seeing what happens. You can see there's a lot of variation on the sort of speeds that I get. This is just a technique we call dolphin diving. And something I want to show off that you could do with dolphin diving. I also don't think there's a term for this, and I don't have a good name for it, so we'll let it go unnamed. But if you are about to go out of the water with a dolphin dive and you press B to cancel your swim to where you would sink, you kind of like float out of the water like this and then fall after you're done with that animation. So if you space this just right, as I did not just there, that looks good. Just make a slight adjustment. We'll find the frame to press B, and I go high out of the water there. If when I do that, I hold forward instead of down, or nothing, I can just grab this high ledge out of swimming. And if you're going up a low ledge, you could immediately just land normally. Now let's go over super swimming. So we're going to use a recoil flip here to enter the water at high speed. So you'll notice my speed doesn't drop instantly when I hit the water. It takes a moment. And I can kind of direct that a little bit. If I hold a direction and mash Z, that'll maintain it. I could also repeatedly tap a joystick direction. Now, unlike regular Z slides and A slides on the ground, this does not have to be alternating per frame. In fact, you can actually wait a while. I'm going to move a little bit before doing a recoil flip here into the water. Oh wait, no. First I'm going to show... Yeah. If you recoil into the water from with not enough height, then you won't be able to do this. You'll just instantly get a surfacing animation. So let me do it from greater height. There we go. I actually went down in the water. I'm going to angle this swim towards the land here. Now, if I can use ESS, and I can actually slide out of that from the water. Something to note about doing an ESS slide out of the water like that is, for whatever reason, your turning radius is going to be substantially larger than it would be if you were to do this starting on the ground. You can see I rotate quicker there. So Zora can also super swim, of course. Zora has more or less identical physics to Human Link. But Zora also has his added water capabilities. So we recoil into the water. And I could do the same techniques I used as human to maintain this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to press B to sink. And that will actually delay me losing the speed. And after I press B to sink, I'm going to press A to float. And then I'll press B to sink again. You can see that's delaying my speed loss. So if I could just alternate these in sequence, and the time between presses will vary the height gain you get in the water. If you wait longer to press A after pressing B, you'll go down more. If you wait longer to press B after pressing A, you'll rise up more. And because of Zora's sinking and floating ability, you can maintain a truly infinite super swim in this game. And you don't have to recoil into the water for this. You can also slide into the water. Remember, Zora Link has very similar physics to humans, so slides work just as well. That is, if I can time it correctly. Now, to actually get a clean slide entry into the water, it's pretty finicky. You gotta enter just right. Fortunately, with a little bit of magic, I can skip some of this process. You can see here I'm entering pretty good, but not perfect. I'm losing just a little bit of speed. Now here I do actually get a truly perfect entry by entering steep enough, and I can just maintain super swim like normal. I'm not going to show this one with a perfect demonstration because it's very situational and really annoying to set up. First of all, if you jump off a ledge as Zora over water while holding A, you'll do the dive. Without it, you're usually just going to do a normal jump. There are some exceptions, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So a dive from high up into the water. I get a lot of speed the moment I enter this water. Actually, for a very brief moment, it's faster than a super swim. Now, if I bunk on a wall during this, I will be able to get a super swim of equal and opposite speed to what I bonked into the wall with. Meaning you could potentially get super swims that are faster than Hess's Z slide, A slide. Using bonks. I can also like jump out of the water, hit my head on a wall, and jump attack to get a super swim. These are not perfect demonstrations, but they show how the trick works, which is what I'm mostly focusing on. Now, one other option for crossing water, Deku. Deku bounces on the water a few times before he would sink. And just like the mega jumps, this is pretty much exactly as easy as it looks. Literally just hold R on the edge of a platform. Then you can use joystick, of course, to direct it. Since Deku's little bounces increase in height with each bounce, you can actually get to some pretty wild places with just Deku. Just as this is a pretty large gap of water, and I'm actually able to get up here. Here I'll be covering various ways to clip. The list is too expansive for me to do a comprehensive list, so I'm just going to cover some basic things. There I was showing this is an acute angle. With enough speed, I can just go straight through it. Zora has a similar method of clipping without needing to do a slide. If I do a jump attack and hold the B button, watch his coordinates. His speed won't do anything, but his coordinates, I'll just shoot forward suddenly. So I go back to this corner here. Jump attack and hold B. I can get through this fence. Now remember earlier, because this is a jump attack, I can do jump / cancel. So I can get in here pretty quick. Make sure you're holding B through to the end of this, otherwise you will not shoot forward. There's also hook shot clip, which basically just get in the corner of a hookshotable actor like a torture an enemy and just hookshot it in Z aiming while kind of trying to like push into it. It's almost comically easy. Straight through. There's ledge clip, which on a spot like this, I can grab this ledge while facing mostly towards this back wall. And when my speed hits 0, I press Z to realign myself to the back wall, and I grab this ledge then at kind of a stupid angle. And depending on where I am in my animation when I drop, I can end up out of bounds. You can see it's not just a trick. I'm not like barely in bounds. I am truly out. You don't have to roll off of the ledge to do it. That's just how people usually do it because that's how it's easy to set up. You can just walk. That works too. Timing in this breathing cycle is very critical. Now, I want to point out that this is a Zora-only method of clipping. If I try to do this same thing with Human Link, when I do it, again, the result will depend on the breathing cycle. But the results I can get off of this are either going to be I end up back on top of the ledge, or I fall back in bounds like that. No matter what I do, those are the only results I'll get. Also worth noting, it only works on a ledge to your left, not a ledge to your right. It's even though I do the inputs correctly here, that's not out of bounds. There is no way that will ever get through that wall. It doesn't have to be a perfect ledge either. You can get out like that. And I don't have a clean end to this tutorial, so that's everything I wanted to cover. Thanks for watching.